I knew I was about to be humiliated the moment my classmate began her first presentation. I was 32 years old, and I was taking a class for new and aspiring school leaders. The assignment was prepare and present evidence of student achievement in your school. As a veteran teacher and new administrator at a famous visual and performing arts high school, I was excited about the project. I was going to be able to advocate for the arts and an arts education, and I was going to be able to show dozens of photos of really cool young people doing epic things. Eager, for once in my life, to actually do some homework, I prepared for this with the intensity I practiced piano all throughout college. And when presentation day came, I was inspired, I was prepared, I was confident, and all of that disappeared the moment the first presenter went. Remember that feeling in high school? Maybe you fell asleep for a few minutes, and when you came to, there was all this mysterious stuff on the board, and you realized you had no idea what was going on. Or that time you were turning in a test, and at the exact moment it became clear it was too late to change anything was the same moment you realized you had done it totally wrong. That's how I felt in this moment. My classmates, in preparing and presenting evidence of student achievement in their schools, had all brought in these. It wasn't until that moment it occurred to me that student achievement is a code word. It's a code word for test scores. And everyone in the room, except for me, had understood that their job was to bring in reams of data showing how well or not their school students had done on recent state-mandated standardized tests. Now, our kids do fine on those tests, but it never once occurred to me that I would use those numbers somehow as proof that these young people were successful. I panicked. I barely heard the presenters talking about standards and percentiles as I sat there thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? I thought about pretending to be sick. I thought about doing the old, oh geez, my laptop's not working, I'm probably gonna have to go tomorrow. I actually thought about leaving, but by then it was too late, and it was my turn, and I had to figure out what to do. I just decided to own it. The Chicago Academy for the Arts is not a typical school. Our students have never done typical work. And in this moment, I knew my presentation was not going to be the typical presentation. To show evidence of student achievement at our school, I brought in this. This is a frame from a film made by Alex, who at the time was an 11th grader in our film, animation, and writing department. The film is called A Starry Night, and it tells the story of a little boy, this little boy, whose mother has died. And he lives in this terribly bleak apartment with his father, and the two of them are trying, desperately at times, to figure out how to be family without mom. The little boy is obsessed with the idea of space travel. He spends all day dressed in his spacesuit, playing with his spaceship toys. At bedtime, he stares out the window at the night sky, fixated on the stars. He longs for escape. Literally, he longs to escape from the earth. Symbolically, he longs to escape from the crushing weight of the loss he feels over the death of his mother. The film is incredibly effective, simultaneously heartbreaking and hopeful, bittersweet and joyful. The audience collectively laughed and cried, everyone touched by Alex's incredible humanity and empathy. By any measure that matters, Alex's film was incredibly successful. The teacher and me recognized it as top-level work. Aesthetically and technically virtuosic, it exceeded any standard that any one of us could have written down in some grading rubric to figure out what grade he ought to get. The arts administrator in me marveled at how, in the making of the film, Alex demonstrated all of the so-called 21st century skills that we are told that young people must embody to be able to find a job 10 years from now. Creativity, collaboration, leadership, etc., etc., etc. But most importantly, the human being in me recognized Alex's film for what it most truly was. A representation of what happens when someone relentlessly pursues excellence in something that matters and in something that they love. Now, by now in my presentation, I had forgotten all about the shame of not having spreadsheets, all about the fear of failing the assignments. I was in the groove, still touched all this time later by the power of Alex's film. But that spell was broken when one of my classmates raised his hand. A principal at another school raised his hand and said, "You know, I just don't see how any of this is relevant. This isn't the real world. You're just describing a fairy tale." To this day, I wonder, when did excellence, purpose, and passion become relegated to fairy tale status? In my 22 years at the Chicago Academy for the Arts, I have watched what happens when young people relentlessly pursue things that they love, relentlessly pursue things that they believe matters, and do things and learn how to do things exceptionally well. What happens is that they become people like Alex. Alex, whose prodigious filmmaking about the dynamic of family, about the themes of loss and isolation, have continued to move audiences long after high school. He made Taxum Square while he was still in college. It premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival before he even graduated. Young people who do this become people like Amari, who not only defies gravity physically, but defies the gravitational pull of average. He's 18 years old. He's already working on his nonprofit to bring the joy of dance to people who are suffering. In just a few weeks, he'll take his first classes at Juilliard. They become people like Maria, whose mission to educate, heal, and inspire has driven her to open music schools in 2 states, and her success at which has helped her earn a recent major Educator of the Year award. And they become people like Justin, who is one of the most successful and sought-after songwriters in the world. Justin is an activist and an advocate tirelessly promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity in the music industry and far beyond. These 4 artists and their hundreds of peers over the years have taught me that we find our best selves and we live our best lives when we relentlessly pursue excellence at the intersection of purpose and passion. Our best lives are when we wake up every day hungry for what's in front of us because that thing is more interesting than sleep. Our best lives are when we spend our time in a state of flow, doing work that we believe personally and publicly matters. And our best lives are when we collapse into bed exhausted at the end of the day, not looking for refuge, not looking for escape, but in the satisfaction of knowing that we did really hard things really well. Everyone should know what this feels like. Unfortunately, most of us rarely know what this feels like. We don't know what this feels like because we listen to the voice in the room or the voice in our head that tells us about our limits. That voice that says, "You can't write a novel. You can't run a marathon. You can't start a nonprofit." We believe that voice in our head that says, "You can't be happy. You can't make a difference. You can't change the world." We rarely feel that way because we chase after the wrong things. We chase after something called success, which almost always just means more. More money, more status, more stuff, none of which ever create any permanent feelings of happiness. Or we've been conditioned to spend all of our time doing practical things, which sadly usually means spend all of your time barely making enough money to buy things that someone else convinced you that you ought to have. And we rarely feel like we're living our best lives because we live in fear of discomfort. So we avoid the difficult conversation, we avoid the painful self-reflection, and we avoid taking the risk for fear of failure and embarrassment, and instead we embrace instant gratification. And we endlessly scroll, we endlessly shop, and we endlessly settle. But there's a way out. In a long career of helping people of all ages learn how to act on their dreams, I've come to believe that there are 3 critical ingredients to living our best lives. 1, reject mediocrity. Understand that what you think of as your limits are almost certainly illusions, and those limits will fade away as soon as we honestly and actually start to challenge them. Doing that is really scary, so embrace the discomfort necessary to do hard things really well. Don't settle. There's magic on the other side. 2, allow yourself to dream big and set audacious goals. Purpose and passion emerge when we approach every day with the spirit of curiosity, openness, and reflection. Ask yourself every day, what do you actually want? Why do you want it? And are you telling the truth? Do this over and over and over again. It might help to imagine that a much older version of you already exists and that person can write you a letter. What does future you desperately wish you would start doing today? Spend as much time as you can doing that thing. And finally, while I'm saying to dream big and set audacious goals, fall in love not with the outcome, but with the journey. Never pin your happiness on achieving anything. The novelty of accomplishment wears off shockingly fast. And when new becomes normal, we are left right back where we started. So instead, fall in love not with the outcomes, but with the steps. Do you want to be an author? Learn how to love writing every single day. Do you want to run marathons? Find a way to find joy in every single early morning and late night training mile. Do you want to start a nonprofit? Figure out how to spend an hour or 3 planning to make a difference every single day. Friends, today I challenge you to reject mediocrity and reject your limits. I challenge you to set big goals, dream audaciously, and I challenge you to fall in love not with the outcome, but with the journey. And may you all find excellence, purpose, and passion. Thank you.